Sarah, for those like me who are new to it, the grow model, which was something, where were you when I was in high school? I really needed that grow model at the time. How does each part, goal, reality, options, and way forward, how does that work in practice?
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Farzana. As part of all that work and the Chartered Director CPD that I did, I also became an executive coach, which is when I first learned about Grow, Doug. And ultimately, I decided to do the coaching because I realized that I could be better as a leader. And when I delved into coaching, I understood that it's actually a process of transformation. So it works by helping people find their own solutions to challenges rather than telling them what to do. And in the past, I've probably been guilty of telling people what to do. And so because it is a particular process, it can help unlock high performance, help people find their own way forward. And that can unlock high performing teams, which is what everybody wants in an organization. Now, Grow, as you asked the question, is a model that was developed and popularized by a fantastic leader called Sir John Whitmore, who actually worked in sports first. And it's a really brilliant team for helping build teams and helping individuals do better at work, but also in their home life. And as we're whole people who come to work and have lots going on at any time, it can really help people just manage day to day in a very positive way. So like you said, grows about four areas. So you have a structured conversation with the other person, and that's about goal setting, reality checking, what options are in front of us, and what does that way forward look like. And then we can kind of delve more into that. So lots of curious questions in terms of what might stand in the way, what people's values and beliefs are, what they think the solutions might be, where they have examples of things that they've done really well before in the past that they can bring to the table to build their confidence. And ultimately, it's just a fantastic way for leaders to help their team players raise awareness, increase their responsibility. And it just means that people are more empowered to move forward more quickly and consistently using their own thinking rather than being dependent on someone telling them what to do all the time. It's as simple as that. It's quite a complex model when you get into it, but it's beautiful in its simplicity.
So, Sarah, you have always said that coaching isn't about giving advice, it's
Mm,
about helping people unlock their own thinking. But I
mm.
wanted to understand that within a high pressure PR environment, where does the Grow model support that mindset? I mean, it sounds wonderful in practice. It sounds wonderful in theory, but I just want to know, how does it work when you've got the sort of, the thrust of the PR industry and the deadlines and, and demands and so forth. How do you balance the nature of the PR industry and the cultures that we operate in with the Grow model?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, like I say, it's beautiful in its simplicity when you talk about it and just set those like four areas out. But it is complex, and when you start to apply it, you can see how many different ways it can be applied. So, what's really interesting, just regardless of sector, why it's useful is it's really invaluable because it helps with people's self-actualization. And if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's right at the top. We all want to belong, and we can belong in a workplace. And we want to have our self-esteem needs met, and often that's by getting approval from others, but also then finding our own approval from within because we're proud of what we're doing. Now, coaching helps people understand their values and what they want in terms of meaning from life. And it's a really great way of creating a plan to achieving that. And that's really helpful in a career setting. Now, we all think about where we are in life and perhaps our career journeys. They may have been linear. It's highly unlikely, but we might have chopped and changed. Some areas might have been quick to achieve. We might have had stumbling blocks at different times. Where coaching can help as it delivers results more quickly and consistently because it gives you that defined goal and it helps the person think about how are they going to get there and break it down step by step. So if you're struggling, for example, in a PR career to get the next step up or promotion, that blocker could actually be your mindset. I'm not good enough. I don't look right. I don't fit in. Now,
Mm.
you mentioned Socially Mobile, our CIC, that we're very grateful to have you on our steering group for Farzana. But often those are the conversations that we have with with our graduates. Maybe I'm just not good enough, and it's not that in the slightest. There is a mindset issue that we need to deal with, and that's what coaching can help with. Now, again, back to the workplace. grow and coaching is really useful because it can really help reduce stress. And you talked about PR being an incredibly stressful environment. It's fast moving, with often dictated to by the news headlines. I mean, there could be a million and one things, just even the pressures that come with running a business. But if you're increasing through the grow model and coaching someone's feelings of personal control, that's immediately helping them to reduce their stress. It can also help reduce the opportunity of a blame culture. And I've been in many organisations where I've seen it, or something doesn't happen, or that client doesn't get this and they're making a complaint, and the people will point fingers. Well, actually, you can reduce that, because coaching is all about asking curious questions, being completely non-judgmental, understanding the situation, active listening, and prompting people to find a different way. So like understanding why is it happening and how else can that issue perhaps be approached. Now, I would argue that in the public relations industry, can be people pleasers. We're certainly problem solvers. We're supposed to be business partners. So that's really important, to be able to go into an organisation and ask sensible, curious questions about how the work we'll be doing will be supporting the organisational objectives and what results they're looking for from that. And I think crucially, because we often think about PR tactically, but we're generally business people. I work a lot with management teams. Where I really love grow is it can move an organisational culture from being one of dependence, where people are just waiting to be told what to do and are not particularly bought in, not particularly empowered, not particularly interested, because everybody's just a bit lethargic, to one of not just independence, where you've got individual high performers who are doing well, but in a kind of silo or just on an individual basis, but where teams are actually interdependent. They're not just focused on their own performance, but actually how you're performing within a department, within the actual group, or the team itself. So and in that's a change of mindset. So they're thinking, well, I know how to do my bit, but how do we unite around a common goal, and what are the questions that we need to ask to move us forward? So again, breaking it down to a plan. Ultimately, grow is just a fantastic way to structure a conversation, to really consider what's going on, and ask questions of the people around you, or the person in front of you, to say, okay, right, how we're going to deal with this. What do you think the solution is? Where's it worked? What's not worked for you in the past? What does it look like? How interested are you in taking this forward? What might get in your way? But in a really kind of like safe environment where people can feel very comfortable to talk openly and bring issues and things that they might have fears about to the table.
Yeah, having worked amongst the cubicles, I know a big part of that lethargy that you mentioned is people are afraid to raise ideas because they're afraid of being told that's a waste of time, or you're moving in the wrong direction.
We've done that before and it didn't
my
work.
Goodness. Yeah, that's right.
I hate that. That's my worst one.
That's right.
We tried that. I'm like, I have to really work very hard on my Zen at that point.
And you can flip that around. We've done that before and it did work. So, right, you're driving by looking in the rearview mirror. It's the same thing. Let me create a scenario here. I'm a manager of a small team. We're working with an internal client, and the freaking client keeps changing either the timelines or I don't like blue anymore. Now I want aqua. No,
heart rate's going up already. I've been here before.
Exactly. So how do I, as the manager, use the grow model with my team to manage that situation?
Yeah, and it's great. So, you sit down in the team and you want to create that psychologically safe environment. So there's no bad ideas. You can talk to each other. You want honesty. And like I said, there's no judgment. And this is where you really have to employ your active listening. But ultimately, that's about setting out the scenario. What is the issue that you're trying to achieve? And where do you want to be with that issue by the end of the conversation that you're having as a team? And that's really, really important. How will you know that the conversation's been a success, and how will it make you all feel as a team? And hopefully, with an issue like this where you've got a nightmare client who's changing the boundaries of the project all the time, or just being generally difficult, you want everybody to feel relieved and empowered and trusted to be able to handle the situation appropriately. So, I mean, the question there is, if you go through this is the beauty of it in its simplicity, and you can see how applicable it can be. But this is like, you start with reality. Okay, what is the situation? What's happening here? Where are we with this goal? So we're talking about, we want this client to, what we're saying here, that they finally stick to some boundaries in terms of, we agree a deadline, they've got to stick to it. Okay, where are we with that? Well, discussion is, well, we've had 5 conversations, we've done it 5 times, we're now over servicing by this much, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, whatever it might be. Question is, okay, so what have we tried already? So then everybody goes through, well, we did this, we did that, or we did the other, or actually we haven't, they're just bloody awful to deal with, everybody's hiding from her, we've all stopped emailing, or, you know, or we've had 3 meetings, whatever that might be. Okay, what has worked, what hasn't, you know, in terms of what's contributed to any successes that you've had. Has anybody else on the team had a good interaction with this person? So you're starting to look at what you're bringing all the details in terms of, okay, who gets on well with her? You know, when's that success been? How urgent is the situation? How much do we need this? How impactful is this going to be for us as a team? Those are the kind of questions you're going into the reality. What is going on here? It's basically getting into the minutiae of it. And then part of that can be listening very carefully, which is why the active listening is so important. So listening to what people are saying and what they're telling you from the way they're wording it. So have they got limiting beliefs about this person? Or there's no point because she's not going to respond. Or actually, I don't believe we can do anything with them. I think we should just ditch the client and move on. And that's really important because that's very instructive in terms of what they're saying and their mindset going into those conversations too. And we'll come back to that. And, you know, it's about what people need to believe in order to change the story. So what you're trying to do is change their mindset. So when they go in for those conversations, that they're framing it differently and they're feeling good about it rather than fearful about what the conversation might go into. So you then, once you've explored that, then there's a lot of different questions, by the way, you can go through there and you pick the ones that are most appropriate. And that's why the active listening is so important. Rather than trying to jump in and provide the solution already, what you're trying to do is prompt the next question so they're thinking about it and all the thinking is coming from them rather than you doing the work for them. And then you move into options. And this is just a case of listing every single option, even if you've got no intention of doing some of them, because you just need people to feel like they have those options. Because I think we all have probably personally, when we've felt our lowest, it's when you feel you have, there's no route in front of you.
No place to go. Yeah.
That's it. So the more you can list, even if they're a little bit fanciful, it doesn't matter. It's about get everything on the table. It could be, let's just get shot of this awful woman. Well, most bosses will be going, we're not doing that. But actually, maybe that's ultimately the answer. You haven't decided that yet. It could be, right, we're going to schedule a weekly call to get ahead of this, talk to her about it. We're going to write her a formal letter to tell her what the impact of her missing these deadlines are and the actual cost to our business and then the cost to her because we're going to be passing that on. It could be a raft of things according to the problem in front of you. And then if people get stuck and they decide, I don't know, it's not about stepping in and answering the question, going, what about doing this and telling people what to do? It's about thinking then, saying, okay, who else has done this well? What did they do? They're thinking about it. They're going, oh, well, so-and-so tried this with her and it worked. Or what would you do if you had no limitations? Or if we had all the money in the world, what would you do? And what's the best thing about that option? What's the worst thing about that option? So you're really forcing a conversation that is very rounded. So people are kind of going, oh, okay, well, we could do that. Or we might do that, the other. And then it depends on, again, what the issue is. It's kind of like when you get to know people, it's really good to pull other voices in. So often when you've got a coachee, they might talk a lot about a particular person, like their friend in Canada or whoever it might be, or there might be a massive Tay-Tay fan. So like, what would Taylor Swift say to you right now? But you know what? It sounds silly, but it really works. When people go, well, she'd say, shake it off and get on with it, have the conversation. It works.
Nice.
It works, right? And so, you're forcing the questions. And then you move them into the way forward, which is the next bit. So the W. So you've gone through what's the goal, what do we need to get to, what's the actual reality, what are our options, and then what's the way forward. So you're listing, prioritize the options. Which ones feel good? Which ones be the most easiest? Which sometimes can be the path of least resistance. So you then have to say, well, which one will be the most impactful? Which is the one that's actually going to achieve what you need to? What support do you need? How committed are you to it? When can you do this? And then what you're trying to do is, once we've decided what works, how commitment, when are you going to do this? How are you going to schedule that time? How will you know you're being successful? What's if you're trying to get some accountability there. So that's a kind of whistle stop tour to what usually takes at least 45 minutes to an hour, but you can get in a sense of how those conversations can really work on an individual basis. I put my teeth back in, or with a group when you've got a thorny issue that people are just fed up with. But it helps because all of a sudden they're like, oh, we can do something about that, and we are empowered to do it. And I can't tell you how often it works. I used to sit and think, I hate asking these questions when I was training, and go, it's just the same question in a different way. And I was a bit embarrassed by it. It's absolutely brilliant in action. Whole convert.
I wanted to talk about the GROW model in terms of resilience, because we all know that the PR industry is a very stressful industry. It's very fast paced. It's very deadline driven. A lot of the outcomes that we're responsible for, we're not necessarily in full control. And that, I think, also kind of leads to this sort of, this drumbeat of stress that permeates our industry. I wanted to understand the GROW model. Is it something that can be applied to PRs working in-house, agency, freelance, in terms of, really avoiding burnout, and also to really be aware of issues that could escalate, that could then lead to burnout? Because we can't change aspects of our industry, but what we can change is, for instance, culture, our approach, awareness. And do you think the GROW model can help us build the resilience that we need in order to sort of, maintain that level of energy that we need to push through the work that we are expected to deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can bring anything to a coaching session, and I see anything and everything when I'm doing my executive coaching. And it goes from things that are very career related to things that are very personal. But that's important because, like I say, we come as our whole self. And I always say to people, imagine that we're like, say you've got 5 marbles in front of us. People think that we need to front up like we're fully coloured. Imagine they're all blue, and everybody thinks that they're 100% blue, all of them, like the full colour. But that's not how we ship up. Sometimes we have bad days, and we might be only 25% blue of us. Do you know what I mean? It's because we're tired and we're harassed, or there's family issues, or the dog's sick, or we haven't slept. And we've just got to get away from that mindset. But people can bring anything into these sessions, and a lot of it will come back down to setting actions and setting boundaries. So it's the boundaries in terms of helping people bring their awareness to what is in their control. So you'll get people coming in and say, I've got an awful boss, how do I make them nicer to me? You can't make anybody nicer to you. What you can do is change how you interact them, understand them, your response, put boundaries in if there's some toxic behaviours that are creeping in. So again, it's changing your mindset and how you respond. But absolutely, in terms of building resilience, in terms of, how can I make myself, I get people who come in and say, I really want to go for promotion, but I just, I've put weight on, I don't feel like I've got the wardrobe, I feel like I can kind of done the job, but I'm not sure if I've got the right, have I got 100% of the skills that are in that job description? All of those things you can unpick with someone. And there'll be a lot of it in their control. In coaching, we also do something called the Wheel of Life, and it kind of cuts into, and I'm going to show my age now, I don't know if anybody's heard of True Pursuit. Some of my coaches haven't, which makes me absolutely appalled. But, I get them to draw a circle, cut it into 4, and then cut it into 4 again, so you've got your 8 parts. And you can basically name those parts, and you give every single one a score out of 10, and see how well you're performing. Because often, if you're, for example, burnout, this is a really good one for burnout, people tend to find the solution in the workplace, and it's often that's not where the solution is, or certainly not where you have a lot of levers you can control depending on where you are in your career and the hierarchy. What you can do is, if you're finding that you're working, if you say you're giving yourself 2 in terms of career, because you're just burnt out and you can see it coming down the road, rather than trying to fix that, what you might do is look at where you've also scored yourself low, and that could be on health, or it could be exercise, it could be spending time with friends and family, it could be romance. And by tweaking the scores in those other areas, it can give you the impetus to get out to the workplace, so you're not doing those deadlines because it's easy because you're sat at the kitchen table with your laptop. So it's quite fascinating in terms of there's a million ways. It's not just the GROW model, there's a number of different coaching tools that can really help people unlock what's going on for them and then choose their own path forward.
Sarah, just last question, and briefly, if you could, give me one baby step that a senior leader could do this week to start coaching their middle managers on how to use the grow model with their teams?
I would say, firstly, there's 3 steps. Go look up the grow model. If you want to go down that route, do the formal training, because you see a lot of people out there without qualifications and they don't necessarily employ coaching in the same way. So that would be my first one. The second thing is notice what you notice yourself. Start with yourself. So I'm a much better leader because I've been through the coaching qualification, but employ active listening. So listen really, really, really hard, and then don't go in with questions or trying to jump in with solutions. Frame your next question around what they've said. You might think you do that already. Most people don't. It is revolutionary. Then the other thing is employ silence. Farzana will tell you, and you can tell by now, I'm a avid talker. I don't shut up very often. Well, I'm better at it now, but in work situations, actually, I do. I listen, and when I need to, there's a power in employing silence. And it creates discomfort for others, so they will think of something else, or they'll come back with another response, or they'll find a different solution. But it also makes people really think about what's going on for them and notice what's going on. Just notice about how you approach things. Notice how you feel physiologically as well when you're approaching meetings, and check your own bias. So back to that difficult client, a really great tip is just to think about your mindset before going in there. Go in thinking that woman will meet you halfway. Don't go in thinking this woman is just never gonna get there. Go in thinking we're gonna have a really productive conversation. It's gonna be great, and it will improve things. I'm not saying you'll definitely get the resolution that you want, but you'll have a better conversation for it.
So, Sarah, how would you persuade middle managers to take on the grow model with their teams when they already feel flat out and they've got a huge to-do list and they've got very limited sort of headspace to learn about the grow model, let alone apply it?
I think it can demonstrate very quickly that by applying the grow model to their work, how can we do this better? What's the issue we're facing? Well, we're all flat out, we're all overworked, the deadlines are getting away with us. You can use that as the rationale for employing the grow model. Let's go through that. Let's apply it. Let's see what happens. Test it. Test it.
Sarah, thanks. This was awesome. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's a pleasure. I'm sorry, I could go on for ages about this. It's so good. I'm absolutely obsessed.